What makes a hero? Is it a single moment of extraordinary courage? Is it a lifetime of flawless virtue? Or is it something deeper, something forged in the fires of impossible odds and profound failure? We're drawn to stories of greatness, of people who rise from nothing to touch the sky. But what if the greatest story is not about a perfect hero, but a broken one? Today, we delve into the life of a man whose name echoes through eternity. A man who was a shepherd, a giant slayer, a poet, a king, a fugitive, an adulterer, and a murderer. A man described as being after God's own heart, yet whose actions would shatter his family and stain his legacy. We're talking about David, and the question we have to ask is not just what he did, but who he was. Was he a hero, or was he a sinner? The answer might just change the way you see your own story. Our journey begins not in a palace, but in a dusty field, under the vast, silent gaze of the stars. Here, a young boy, the youngest of 8 sons, is forgotten. When the great prophet Samuel comes to anoint the next king of Israel, David isn't even invited. He is the afterthought, the one left to tend the sheep. But it is here, in the solitude of the wilderness, that his true character is forged. While his brothers were learning the ways of men, David was learning the ways of God. While they were polishing their armor, he was tuning his heart. He wasn't just protecting his flock from predators. He was learning that the source of all strength, all courage, comes not from a sword, but from a deep, unshakable faith in a God who sees the forgotten. And then the moment comes. The armies of Israel are paralyzed, cowering before a 9-foot giant named Goliath, a champion who mocks not just the soldiers, but their God. For 40 days, he bellows his challenge, and for 40 days, fear reigns supreme. Then, onto this stage of terror walks the shepherd boy, armed with nothing but a staff, a sling, and 5 smooth stones. His own king doubts him. His own brothers scorn him. But David sees something they don't. They see a giant too big to hit. David sees a target too big to miss. He doesn't see a battle of flesh and blood. He sees a battle of faith and fear. He roars back at the giant. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." In that moment, a stone is released, and an empire of fear comes crashing down. This single act of faith catapults him from obscurity into the heart of the nation. He becomes a celebrated warrior, a beloved leader, the best friend of the king's own son, Jonathan. But with great victory comes great envy. King Saul, the man who should have mentored him, becomes his tormentor. David, the nation's hero, becomes a fugitive, hunted in the very wilderness where he first learned to trust God. For years, he lives in caves, running for his life, leading a band of outcasts. Yet, it is in this period of intense suffering that he pens many of the Psalms, the most honest and raw prayers ever written. He pours out his fear, his anger, his despair, and his unwavering hope into songs that would comfort billions for millennia to come. He was being stripped of everything: his home, his safety, his reputation, so that he would rely on God alone. This was not a detour from his destiny. It was the final, brutal training ground for the throne. And finally, after years of trial and bloodshed, the shepherd boy from Bethlehem, the forgotten son, the fugitive in the wilderness, is crowned king of Israel. He has arrived. The hero's journey is complete, or so it would seem. But the greatest test of a man's character isn't found on the battlefield, under the stress of survival. It's found in the quiet moments of power and peace, when the discipline that got you to the top begins to fade. David, now the undisputed king, has united the nation. He has a palace. He has power. He has prestige. In a season when kings go off to war, David stays behind. He strolls on the rooftop of his palace, a man at ease. And it is here, in this moment of idleness, that his greatest enemy reveals itself. Not a giant from a foreign army, but a temptation from within his own heart. From his vantage point, he sees a beautiful woman, Bathsheba, bathing, and a chain of events is set in motion that will define the rest of his life. A look turns into a desire. Desire turns into a command. He uses his royal power, the very authority given to him by God to protect his people, to take another man's wife for his own pleasure. This isn't a moment of youthful indiscretion. This is a calculated abuse of power by a middle-aged man who has forgotten who he is and who God is. And when Bathsheba becomes pregnant, the sin deepens. The hero who once ran toward danger now runs toward deceit. He orchestrates a cover-up, a web of lies designed to hide his transgression. He summons her husband, Uriah the Hittite, from the battlefield, an honorable soldier, a man of profound integrity. But Uriah is too loyal, too dedicated to his men, to go home to his wife while they are sleeping in the fields. Uriah's integrity becomes an obstacle to David's deceit. And so, the king's heart hardens further. The man who once risked his life to save his flock now writes a death warrant for one of his most loyal sheep. With his own hand, he pens the order, seals it with his royal ring, and places it in the hand of Uriah himself. The letter instructs the army commander to put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest, and then to withdraw from him, so he'll be struck down and die. It is a cold, premeditated murder. The giant slayer has become a killer. The psalmist has become a liar. The man after God's heart has shattered God's law. For almost a year, David lives with this secret. He marries Bathsheba. The child is born, and he continues to rule as king, perhaps believing he has gotten away with it. But God does not forget. He sends the prophet Nathan to the palace. Nathan doesn't come with accusations. He comes with a story about a rich man with many flocks and a poor man with nothing but one little ewe lamb that he loved like a daughter. And when a traveler came to the rich man, instead of taking one of his own sheep, he stole the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest. David, the king, the guardian of justice, is filled with righteous anger. He leaps to his feet and declares that the man who did this deserves to die. And in the silence of the throne room, Nathan points his finger at the king and speaks the 4 words that shatter David's world. You are the man. Suddenly, the parable becomes a mirror. David sees his own reflection. He is the rich man who had everything. Uriah was the poor man with his one beloved wife, and David stole her. The prophet recounts every detail of David's sin, the adultery, the deceit, the murder, and pronounces God's judgment. Because you have done this, the sword will never depart from your house. And then the fall gives way to the first step of redemption. The king, confronted with the full weight of his darkness, does not execute the prophet. He doesn't make excuses. He doesn't shift the blame. He completely breaks. His response is simple, profound, and immediate. I have sinned against the Lord. This is perhaps the most heroic moment in David's entire life. Not slaying the giant, but slaying his own pride. In the aftermath, he pens Psalm 51, a prayer that has become the anthem for the brokenhearted. Have mercy on me, O God. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. Create in me a pure heart. He understood that the consequences for his actions were severe, and they were. The child conceived in adultery would die. His family would be torn apart by violence and rebellion for years to come. Forgiveness did not erase the scars. But in this moment of utter brokenness, David shows us why God chose him in the first place. His heart, even when shattered into a million pieces by his own sin, was a heart that desperately wanted its way back to God. I want to pause here and ask you a question. Which David do you relate to more? The young, fearless David on the battlefield, or the broken, repentant David on his knees? Let me know in the comments below. His story shows us that even our most catastrophic failures do not have to be the final word. He is no longer the flawless hero on a pedestal. He is now something far more powerful, far more real, a forgiven sinner, clothed in mercy, who must now learn to lead from a place of profound humility and a deep understanding of grace. The life of David from that moment on is a complex tapestry, woven with threads of both divine grace and painful consequence. The prophet's words proved true. The sword did not depart from his house. His own family became a source of his deepest heartbreaks. He saw betrayal, rebellion, and the agonizing death of his own son, Absalom, a son he loved dearly despite his treason. The once invincible warrior king is seen weeping on the rooftops of Jerusalem, a father grieving a loss that his own past sins had helped to sow. He was humbled, not just before God, but before his people, a king who now intimately understood the weight of his own brokenness. Yet, this is where the story takes its final, breathtaking turn, because David's legacy is not defined by his failure. His sin is a chapter in his story, but it is not the final chapter. What did this man, this flawed and forgiven king, leave behind? He left a united kingdom, a nation forged from scattered tribes into a powerful force. He established Jerusalem as the capital city, a holy center for a people to gather and worship. And though God would not let him build the temple himself, David became its chief architect. He poured his own wealth, his passion, and his final years into gathering the materials, drawing up the plans, and organizing the priests and musicians. He prepared the way for a golden age of worship that would be realized through his son, Solomon. But even greater than the legacy of a king is the legacy of a worshiper. David's most intimate gift to the world is the Book of Psalms. In its pages, he gave humanity a language for God. He taught us that it's okay to cry out in despair, to question in anger, to weep in sorrow, and to dance in unrestrained joy. He showed us how to bring our whole, authentic, messy selves into the presence of God. When you feel abandoned, you can pray with David, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When your heart is overflowing with gratitude, you can sing with him, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And when you have failed, when you are crushed by the weight of your own guilt, you can whisper his prayer, "Create in me a pure heart, O God." He gave us permission to be human before a holy God. So, we return to our question. David, hero or sinner? The answer is a resounding yes. He was both. He was a hero who faced down giants, and a sinner who fell to his own desires. He was a king who united a nation, and a man who tore his own family apart. And that is precisely why his story is so powerful, so relentlessly hopeful. His life is not a blueprint for perfection. It is a testament to the scandalous grace of God. It shows us that God does not look for flawless people. He looks for honest hearts. David's ultimate legacy points beyond himself. God made a promise to him that from his lineage would come a king whose kingdom would have no end. David was a flawed shepherd who became a flawed king, but he was a signpost, pointing down the corridors of time to a perfect shepherd and an eternal king. Jesus, the son of David, would be the one to truly crush the serpent's head, to win the ultimate victory not just over a 9-foot giant, but over sin and death itself. The story of David is the story of us all. We are all a mixture of courage and cowardice, of faith and failure. But his life declares that our brokenness is not a disqualification for God's love. It is the very stage upon which his grace can be most powerfully displayed. God isn't looking for heroes. He's looking for people who, after they have fallen, will use whatever strength they have left to turn their hearts back home. If this story of a perfectly imperfect hero moved you, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we continue to explore the most powerful stories ever told, stories of real people, real failures, and a God whose mercy is greater than all our sins.